Before we get into today's lecture, we might reflect a few moments on what are we trying to do and what is the purpose of these lectures that we hope that people will go to the web and at their time that they're available, go through them and pay attention to them. The first thing I would say is that the World Health Organization monitors and overlooks the status of health in all the member nations of the United Nations. And they release the figures that the number one cost of all the nations is in the United States. And the figures that I had was $10,300 per citizen per year, rapidly increasing. I saw a note somewhere in a publication recently that's already elevated to about 12,000. But I haven't formally seen that. But periodically, the World Health Organization does a survey of the quality of life and health status of the nations. And the United States came in number one in healthcare cost and number 35th the last time they did a survey in the quality of life and health. So number one in cost, 35 in benefits. Unfortunately, in the United States, the cost of healthcare is exorbitant, all the way from drugs to if you have to go into the hospital, if a regular room can take up the rest of your earning capacity until you retire, and if you have to go to ICU and surgery and spend some time there, it can be more expensive than you can earn in a lifetime. I am not opposed to capitalism and free enterprise, but I am opposed to exploitive pricing, which is what we face. Now, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act was passed in 1994, and that was just one of the numerous efforts that have been done to try to decrease healthcare costs while elevating quality of life. And this has been fought by the sickness industry time and time again when efforts to change this picture that I told you. But you've got in your own ability to improve your personal and your family choice of food and the amounts and the type of food that you eat that is in harmony with the engineering and design of life that is coded in your genes. In the preamble to the Dietary Supplement Act, which was to make natural products available to citizens, the preamble states that optimal nutrition is essential for good health, to prevent disease, and to restore health. Right quickly, you'd say, well, what more would you want from nutrition, which each of us have control of? And I can tell you right quickly, you'd like for it to be in the law. There was a great celebration over this statement in the preamble, but that's not part of the law. That's just a statement that the congressional people put on there of why they had hearings and considered this legislation. In the labeling section of the Dietary Supplement Act, which is also called the DSHEA legislation, in the labeling section, I paraphrase again, it states that only a government-approved pharmaceutical, FDA-approved drug can represent or claim to treat, cure, or mitigate a disease or syndrome or correct an abnormal health condition. And that is avidly enforced by the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA. And in fact, a international dietary supplement company that I was a medical director for a decade was fined approximately $10 million for its distributors showing individuals and making claims that they said they wouldn't make to improve health with a natural product that is not a government-approved drug. But you don't have to get involved in something like that. But I have 36 years now involved starting with research on why has the aloe vera leaf gel been used for over 5,000 years by multiple societies for multiple health supporting activities. And a company, Carrington Laboratories, raised $20 million to try to make a new drug under the FDA of the active ingredient from the aloe vera leaf gel. Well, unfortunately, though they had 12 academic institutions meeting all the research requirements of the Food and Drug Administration, the new drug application was thrown out for one, no toxicity or adverse side effects whatsoever could be shown in multiple animal studies and also in humans. Number two, it didn't matter whether the deviation from normal health was physical, mental, or emotional. If you added the active ingredient from the aloe to the diet, there was significant improvement. And it's not a drug, and we don't claim to treat, cure, or mitigate any disease or abnormal health condition. All we do is optimize nutrition and turn it over to the genes that control cellular synthesis to make bioactive compounds by hooking together these nutrients to make biochemical compounds that operate the biochemistry and the physiology of normal health. So you can, with your personal choices and with your family, have the power and the opportunity to optimize the health of your family, decrease healthcare costs while increasing quality of life. And I hope that I can be your servant and messenger to bring this message to you, because I didn't develop anything new. All this information about the power of more comprehensive nutrition is very ancient. You can find it in the Hebrew scriptures. You can find it in Sanskrit from India, and you can find it in so-called statements by Confucius in China of the power of nutrition to optimize the quality of life. And this in turn decreases the costs, not only for your family, but if you're in business or in an employee in a group and their premiums just keep rising because of this exploitation of health costs, you can, if a group were to go into more comprehensive nutrition, you can decrease healthcare costs for everyone and increase quality of life. So with that, this next lecture is focused on the benefits we've had of experience of more comprehensive nutrition and how it influences our lungs and pulmonary function. So with that, we'll get started with the lecture. Thank you. I just got through stating that we would focus on pulmonary function and the benefits we have observed with more comprehensive nutrition built around the active ingredient from aloe leaf gel, which was found by academic institutions to be acetylated mannose, which for short is called acemannan. And by adding this to your diet, I now have 36 going into 37th year of working with the formulation, trying to improve it, to put into the modern diet nutrients that are no longer present in the modern food chain because we plowed up our family gardens and chopped down our orchards, and agriculture follows the growth zones across the nation. And unfortunately, to have a shipping life and a shelf life, they pick it green when the principal molecule in the fruit and vegetables is chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is wonderful stuff. It's amazing what it does in terms of capturing energy from the sun that starts energy for our planet. However, our genes do not require chlorophyll, as a nutrient to make bioactive compounds to run the biochemistry of life. And this decreases healthcare costs. In fact, we have a study where there were 281 type 2 diabetics at a clinic at Air Force Base, and another group of approximately 281 where the physician thought comprehensive nutrition was a bunch of hokum, and all he used was drugs. Well, by not denying the test group any drug they needed, but adding more comprehensive nutrition that we'll be talking about today, the decrease in cost of the 281 was 40% per year compared to the comparison group that only had drugs. So with that, we will go to the next slide. And this is an interesting story that Dr. Reason from Loma Linda School of Medicine in the pediatric department, husband was a childhood asthmatic. And usually the asthma goes away when they become adults. However, in his case, even as an adult, he still had asthmatic attacks until by good luck or fortune of some nature, he tried the dietary supplements that we had in the early 1900s and early 2000, built around the aloe acemannan, and he quit having serious asthma. But due to this, she wanted to have a study done in the pediatric department, and so we worked with her, and this is the title of the paper she published. It's titled "A Random Open Label," meaning there's no controls. They just compare it to how well they improve as an individual on the effects of standard asthma treatment. They weren't denied any asthma treatments, but they had the combination of the glyconutrients, glyco meaning Greek for sweet, or sugars, which is the active ingredient from the aloe plant, and other plant molecules that are placed in the plant kingdom that our genes call for to properly synthesize and hook together nutrient molecules to make the compounds, and what all this did for the asthma patients. And you see the other people on her staff that worked with her. So this is an example of the type of data that was collected, and they hooked the children up to a mask, and you can see they had two different groups, and they have them breathe into this, and they have a device there that tells about the airflow that they're able to do, and you'll have the baseline flow, which was 360 for the first patient there in table 1. And at 6 months, it was 400. If you will go down, you will see that at 1, 3, 4, and 6 months, that the ability of these children to move more ambient air through their lungs increased as the months increased that they were taking the aloe acemannan, which supports the engineering and design of life that is coded in the genes. And this is just an example of data that they collected on these patients. Now, they had 32 patients, which 25 completed the study, and group 1 had more comprehensive nutrition. That's what the MCN stands for, and only their common therapy. And then the second group had 6 months of more comprehensive nutrition. And in the third month, they added the common therapy. And you can see in the clear bar graphs that the percent above baseline leaped in the group 1, and you can see it increased even more in the group 2, which are the black ones. But even at 6 months, they were doing better than they did when they started. So that's the bar graph to interpret the multiple measurements you saw in the first slide. This was a case report by a adult medical doctor, Dr. Purcell, and he had 2 patients, and he did this peak flow of the patients, and they started out, if you'll see there, subject 1 was 170 cc's of air could be moved to start with, and the second patient really had bad lungs. They could only move 70 cc's of air, and after a month on supplementation, patient adult 1 went from 175 to 275 cc's when they breathed into the machine. And lo and behold, patient number 2 went to 400 cc's. And at the end of 8 months of more comprehensive nutrition, they maintained their ability to move more oxygen. And so this is very healthy. And so these patients don't go around feeling like they're trying to breathe through say a wet cloth that cuts off their ability to breathe. That's what patients have told me. They'd say if you would take a wet cloth, put it up to your face and try to breathe through it, or get it real close, and then when you breathe, you touch, and it just cuts off your breath. This is what asthmatics live with. And one of the reasons they carry around these little devices in their pocket to try to dilate their lungs. But this is maintaining the ability to move room air through the lungs and the improvement with more comprehensive nutrition. This is another patient study. It was very interesting that a nurse working on her master's degree, Mary Vanderwall, selected with her faculty advisor, Dr. Pippinger, cystic fibrosis patients. And this is one of the worst maladies that is a gene caused problems. And they had 91 patients with cystic fibrosis. And the number that, while during this study, that they seemed to get worse was only 2.2%. They didn't seem to respond to more comprehensive nutrition. But the number that is just static was 25%, but mildly improved was nearly 31%. Mildly improved. The moderately improved was nearly 20%, 18 out of 91. And greatly improved was nearly 22%. So we had a total number reporting improvement of 72.5%. Hey, that's pretty good for anything you're trying to do in medicine to try to help people. They can't move air in and out of their lungs. But these children also have cystic fibrosis because they have such thick mucus that they have digestive problems. And I really wasn't aware of this before these patients, but there was an 81% improvement in their gastrointestinal symptoms that they had from cystic fibrosis, which results in very thick mucus, and that they can't clear it out of their lungs, and they also, their GI tract doesn't work right. It's very lazy and difficult, and constipation is common. And this really improved this genetic defect. The abstract from this study and the children that they did a post-marketing survey, and the quality of life was improved by the addition of the glyconutritionals or dietary supplements based on the active ingredient from the aloe, which is acetylated mannose, a sugar. They had a survey of 271, was distributed, and 98 returned the results and participated in the study. So there was a 36.1% response rate, just inviting people to be in the children to be in the study. That there were 3 that they didn't use their data because they were incomplete or they failure. In other words, they've got to meet certain criteria to be considered that they're really doing the more comprehensive nutrition. And we showed you the percentages of improvement of lung function and digestive function. And they were rated as whether they got no improvement, whether they had mild improvement, moderate, or great improvement, as we showed you. That the analysis that 85.3% of those respondents that followed through with the study experienced a change and improvement in symptoms, and that the digestive symptoms were 81.1% and the lung 72.5%. Only 2 out of all of these patients said that they didn't get better. So so they discontinued the supplement, and in our experience, if they would have continued, even they might have in time started doing better. Now, this abstract that they put together for this study, that they didn't have any toxicity or untoward side effects. Their cystic fibrosis didn't get worse. And in fact, we had some that they quit culturing Pseudomonas, which is the terrible bacteria that destroys lung tissue. But they felt like that what you should do is continue the medical treatment that the physicians or pediatricians do. We don't claim to treat, cure, mitigate disease. All we do is improve their nutrition. But you should continue to the cystic fibrosis treatment, but add to it the dietary supplementation, which is something we've seen time and time again, how much better they do. And this is a little table that, again, that we've mentioned before, that by the 95 patients that the lung symptoms improved in 72.5%, and the digestive symptoms of the GI tract improved 81.1%, which is incredible. And in fact, there was a family in Canada that had 3 or 4 daughters with cystic fibrosis. And I recently had an email from the father about how well 2 of them have done, are now married and have a virtually normal life, which is very unusual. Unfortunately, one of them did not respond as well as the other 2, and as is all too common, she had an early death. So 2 out of 3 doing quite well is pretty good. Now, this next study is from the University of California at Irvine. And when I was visiting there with a infectious disease specialist, Dr. Darrell C., on the shelves, they had a bunch of stacks of computer output, long sheets that are stacked up. And I said, "What is that?" And he said, well, we had a public health department grant here that the university was to do in vitro, and in vitro means in the laboratory, screening of 196 natural products for potential toxicity and benefit. And this was an early stage of the dietary supplement industry getting going after passage of the DSHEA Act in 1994. And you can see there the people that worked with Dr. Darrell C on this. And this is the summary of the 196 products. And this is in the appendix. And they had 6 tests that they did with samples of the 196 ingredients and formulations. And they had a test for liver toxicity. They had a test for potential bone marrow toxicity of what it did to the peripheral blood picture. And then they did an enzyme, because the P450 enzyme of the liver is an enzyme that detoxifies many toxic chemicals. And you'll notice between the asterisks that there was no toxicity or P450 effect, and the 3 tests for efficacy or benefits were positive on these products below. One was just aloe powder, one was garlic powder, and then there was formula 48, 49, and 51. And what excited us over this is that for benefits, they tested in cultures the effect on natural killer cells. Did it increase natural killer cell activity, which destroys viruses, bacteria, and even in some patients, apparently malignant cells. And then there was a test for glutathione production. That's what GSH stands for. And that is a little cloud of material that quenches or binds free radicals and nascent oxygen. That is a little cloud around all the mitochondria, because the mitochondria, which is the source of energy to the cell, processes glucose and transfers energy from the bond between the carbon atoms to adenosine triphosphate, ATP, which is the energy molecule that runs our body. And so that's a very important function inside the cell, in addition to the natural killer cell. And then they tested it for antiviral activity. So those were the 3 benefits or efficacy tests. And then there were the 3 to the left, evidence of toxicity, that are frequently applied to pharmaceutical drugs. And so they applied all of these to these dietary supplements. Well, Formula 48, 49, and 51, I was involved in with the dietary supplement company that I have, and this is the generic term for them. But what it was is that 48, 49, 51 were the aloe acemannan from the aloe leaf gel formulation, plant sterols, primarily Mexican yams, and that support more efficacious hormone balance in the body. And then the other one was the freeze-dried phytonutrients from vegetables and fruit. In other words, you take the pulp from vegetables and fruit, you freeze it and put it in a vacuum to remove the water to make a powder. And back in the 1930s, they found out that even enzymes retained their activity. So the bioactivity by freeze drying is retained in the vegetables and fruit. So you allow the vegetable or fruit to mature on the plant so that the genes in the plant can put the nutrients that the genes call for in cellular synthesis to make the bioactive compounds to run the biochemistry of life. Well, the key ingredients in 48, 49, 51 were all combined in 209 to make New Eden formulation that is what we time and time again tell you is available by web. If you want to elevate your personal and your family health status, I'll give you an example. My wife is a physician, and she pointed out recently that we had been married nearly 30 years, and I had never missed a day of work, that I'd never had the flu or any kind of crud that floats around in the hospital. And I have been taking the aloe acemannan particularly, but also combined with the sterols and the phytonutrients for decades. And so I am a walking example of decreased healthcare costs. I don't have to go to the doctor or the clinic or the hospital, and certainly haven't been in ICU with just the price of a dietary supplement. Anyway, this 196 ingredients and formulations that were on the market in the United States were all tested for three potential sources of toxicity and untoward side effects, and for three that I showed you very positive health benefits. And the formula that we were making available to the public, formulas 48, 49, 51, had no toxicity, just like the aloe, the garlic, and it had natural killer cell activity increased, the glutathione production was increased, and the antiviral activity was shown to increase. Now, to end this pulmonary story that I've been sharing with you, I want to end with this case report. And there was a young lady that was a biostatistician that was teaching biostatistics at the medical school in Oklahoma, Tulsa, and she was also a pre-med student. And she went to Oklahoma State University School of Medicine. And the case report is that she had a daughter, a female, 8-year-old Rosie. And Rosie, at 8 years of old, had nearly died twice in ICU from severe asthma attacks. And they were triggered by multiple things like dust in the air, pollen and other products when the weather changes, certain foods, and even going out and it's extreme change in temperature could cause her to have trouble being able to move the air because you have bronchospasm and you can't move the air in and out to your lungs. But the worst thing that can happen is you can get what's called status asthmaticus. And this is so bad that you're put in ICU. And the problem is that the heart rate is over 200. Fact is, if I recall correctly, Rosie's were up to 240 beats per minute. And of course, the normal resting is around 60 and maybe as high as 90 if you're moving around. But with athletic activity, it'll go higher. But at rest, around 60 beats per minute. Here she's 200 plus. And looking in the literature at this time, it reported with a Google search that 15,000 children a year die from cardiac fatigue due to status asthmaticus. Their heart just gets so worn out and tired and fatigued that it causes death in these children. Well, Rosie had been in the ICU twice with this. Well, her mother was going through Dallas-Fort Worth Medical Center as a potential post-medical school site to get additional clinical training. And she noted scientific posters on the walls in the halls from research that, as a consultant to Carrington Laboratories, we had presented at multiple medical and scientific conferences. And she was a smart little girl. And she said, this might help Rosie. And so she started Rosie on the aloe acemannan formulation orally in 1991. It is now 2023. She's never been in a doctor's office again for asthma attack. She's never been in the emergency room for asthma attack. Fact is, she hadn't had any asthma attacks and certainly hadn't been in ICU. She continued to grow up, went through pregnancy. That child is now 20, and the doctors were uneasy watching her real close, but it didn't cause any pulmonary problems. And she rarely now takes a hand puffer for her asthma when we're having some of these northern high winds bringing in various allergens that affect people with itchy eyes and itchy nose, and raises terrible benefits with asthma patients. Well, the bottom line to this story, which is the actual one that I participated in, is that the aloe acemannan worked so well for Rosie. Her mother, Dr. Candice, is now Dr. Candice McDaniel. Worked so well for Rosie. Your mother and I got married, and that was 30 years ago that we got married. And I think that pretty well is the end of trying to share with you the marvelous benefits that people have had with more comprehensive nutrition that improve quality of life while decreasing healthcare costs in common and even genetic problems that compromise lung function. So with that, I hope you realize that by adding this to your diet, you add nutrient molecules that are no longer in the modern health chain of nutrients, and that you can personally and for your family decrease healthcare costs while increasing quality of life.